Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. My name is Alexina Cather, and I am the Director of Policy Advocacy and Sustainability at the James Beard Foundation. And I am joined today by someone who has become a fast friend this week. I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Denise Osterhues, and I lead Sustainability and Social Impact for Kroger, based in Cincinnati. And I'm also president of the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation that is sponsoring the future of food. So thank you all for being here and excited to chat a little bit more.
Thank you. And Denise, I'm hoping you could just give us a little backstory about these videos and their origin and why you chose children.
Yeah, I would love to. So a couple of years ago, Kroger started a relationship with a technology platform called Interview, and their purpose is to engage high school and college students in community service that aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, given that that Kroger's Zero Hunger, Zero Waste plan is really focused on ending hunger and food waste and all waste, we sponsored the work and the volunteerism behind Goals 2 and 12. So both Goal 2, Zero Hunger, and Goal 12, which is responsible consumption and production. So we have an army of zero heroes among our high school and college students across the country. So these are students, we designed a program that gives them kind of projects and gives them credit for community service hours that align to the UN SDGs. So when we talk about the future of food, I truly believe some of these students will be the future of food. And they always want to know, by the way, how we got our jobs, because they want our jobs, all of you. They want all of your jobs. And they want to know, they're interested in career paths that align with their personal mission and feelings and purpose to align with sustainability and to drive positive social change. So I think it's just really encouraging. I think it's great to hear their voices, how they think about these topics, and they often are coming up with solutions that we have not. So I think it's worth bringing them into the conversation.
Thanks so much. Throw it to our next video.
Hi, my name is Chinadium from West Bloomfield, Michigan, and I've been an omnivore my entire life.
Hi, I'm Swanuja from Chandler, Arizona, and I've been an omnivore my whole life.
Hi, my name is Morgan, and I'm from Michigan. I've been an omnivore my whole life, although I'm working on cutting meat out of my diet.
Hi, my name is Maria. I live in Houston, Texas, and I've been an omnivore my entire life.
Eliminating waste will be key for our food system. We have enough food to feed everybody, but it is not distributed equally. In addition, making food production sustainable will be highly important with increasing uncertainties surrounding our climate.
In a perfect world, equitable food access and distribution looks like both impoverished and marginalized communities having the same access to food compared to their wealthier counterparts.
In a perfect world, equitable or fair food access and distribution ensure economic opportunity, high-quality jobs with living wages, safe working conditions, access to healthy, affordable, and culturally appropriate food, and environmental sustainability.
In a perfect world, everyone would have access to healthy food and would be able to afford it, either through government money or because of reduced food prices.
So I think it's just really great to hear how they are thinking about food and how we're going to feed a growing global population without destroying the planet. They have great ideas. They have shared with us some of their perspectives. We were curious and did a big survey across the platform for students to volunteer to take that asked them, how do you eat today? You've seen some of the responses. And are you willing to try different foods? And how interested or curious are you about insect cuisine, for example? Or are you considering a vegan lifestyle and diet? So I think it's just really interesting to see some of the responses. We engage the students on the virtual platform regularly to get their perspectives and opinions, and we also connect them with some of our friends and partners like World Wildlife Fund, with Fair Trade USA, with the Google team, for example, on the topic of food waste. And it's just great to engage the youth and students in some of these topics that we're talking about for the 2 days of the future of food. So just wanted to share a little bit of that with you, just to give you some insight from some of those even younger than all of us.
Thanks.
Do we need to cue?
Hi, my name is Shreyan. I'm from Troy, Michigan, and I've been a vegetarian my whole life.
Hi, my name is Kavya Mishra, and I live in Chandler, Arizona. I've been a vegetarian for my whole life.
My name is Tita. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've been an omnivore for my whole life.
Hi, my name is Libby. I'm from Orange County, California, and I've been vegan for about 1.5 years.
Pros of having technology in the food industry would be that the food would be able to maintain freshness for longer, but cons would probably outweigh the pros, since cons would be that people that work in the food industry right now would lose their jobs, and a malfunction in the robots could cause, or technology could cause food poisoning or a disease to break out, and the prices of the food would go up since the technology would take more money to make.
It'll make it easier for larger farms to grow, and that potentially might lead to smaller farms losing out. However, in the long run, technology will have a positive influence on food production and food-related jobs, as the demand for food will continue to increase in the future.
Technology has the capacity to advance and take over jobs within the agriculture industry, which is both good and bad depending on the circumstances within the farms to begin with.
Technology will make everything food-related more efficient. I've seen farmers use apps from their phone to water big fields of plants.
Okay, thank you so much. For those of you just coming in, my name is Alexina Cather, and I'm the Director of Policy Advocacy and Sustainability at the James Beard Foundation, and I am joined by some brilliant minds today. We're going to be talking about tackling the world's dumbest problems. So, as you already heard from Denise Osterhues here in the middle, she is the Senior Director at the Kroger Company and President of the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation. I have Yoni Medhin, co-founder of Grain for Grain, and Emily Ma, head at Food for Good at Google. Pretty all-star lineup. So this is part one of a two-part conversation. And like I said, we're going to be talking about tackling the world's dumbest problem. And when you think about it, it really is. If I was to ask anyone in the audience today, who likes food waste? Anyone? No. We can all agree it's a huge problem. So just last week, after another dire Intergovernmental Planet on Climate Change report was released, several climate change scientists announced they would go on strike because calls to actions were going unanswered by politicians. I think we can all agree climate change is extremely complex and complicated, but there are aspects that we can tackle, and one of those is food waste. So clearly food waste is a big problem, and people need to make changes in their personal routines to reduce food waste. But how do we approach the problem in a non-critical way?
I know.
It's a big question, but there's a lot of guilt that comes along with food waste. You know, somebody who cares very, very deeply about the topic, feel really bad, but I waste food. I do. I think we all waste food in this room. And it can get to the point where we feel so guilty about it, and we hear this messaging over and over and over again. So how do we change that?
I was just going to say, don't feel guilty. We shouldn't feel guilty. We all do it. But we can make changes. So we can advance change in our own family and household by managing our food differently at home and extending freshness and using a little bit of everything when we cook, and then composting what we can't eat or use. But it is a crazy problem to think about. But there are solutions, and I think that's the hopeful piece, is we don't have to feel bad. We can move forward, be optimistic and hopeful, and start doing the things ourselves.
I'm allowed to say this here because my husband is sitting in the audience. So we have a no food waste household where it all ends up in my stomach if it's headed towards the trash can. That's how we solve it, is I put it in my stomach.
Amazing.
You know, it's like if it's not going to kill you, you're going to eat it, right?
Exactly.
Right, sweetie? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there's many different aspects to it. There's your personal decision making as a company. And so for me, I'm kind of in Emily's camp, just eat all of it and then it's solved. And then from us, from business, and we'll talk about this in a bit too, but deciding like how you price things to make them maybe more competitive, or from a personal standpoint, buying maybe a little bit less, or dictating or kind of adjusting your purchasing patterns. So yeah, there's a lot of ways.
Can I be a little bit more serious about this?
Please.
Okay, so honestly, if you look into your fridge and it smells like it's okay to eat, it's probably still okay to eat. I think a lot of times we look at our labels and we're like, what does best by mean, or used by mean, or like, oh, sold by mean? We forget that we have this incredibly well-tuned system that, like, over millennia has been developed to detect whether something is edible or not. And we've forgotten to trust those senses. So if you're a consumer out there, if you're any sort of eater, go back and taste things, because that first taste will give you a lot of information.
Okay, statement on behalf of the food safety team at Kroger.
Sorry.
Would be, no, just personal example, my husband and I have very different sensory and smell senses. So, and he grew up in a small grocery family. They had a Osterhues market on the west side of Cincinnati for a couple generations, and he will tell you they only ate things after they had expired. So they took home what they couldn't sell and they ate it. His stomach is a little stronger than mine. So we have a little bit different opinions. But I would say, yes, generally that's true. And also we are, as a business, and other companies are doing the same, we're trying to align to more standardized date labels to be clearer to our customers. So, sell by or best by indicates quality. Use by indicates food safety. So best by, use by will be the new standard. So most companies are trying to align to that, which was partly our friends at ReFed who helped kind of guide some companies down that path. Go ReFed. So that, anyway, that's my public service announcement.
Thank you. And I think in terms of a lot of things in the food system and a lot of things that have to do with climate change, a big habit of politicians and businesses is to really put the onus on the consumer and make us feel like we're the ones that have to do all the change, when really sometimes more of the moving the needle stuff has to happen at a different level. So in terms of food waste, where do you think there's the most bang for your buck? Is it continuing to change messaging and push change at the individual level, or is it restaurants, businesses, institutional food? Where is there really the most power for change right now?
All of the above. Everybody. So I think one of the lessons from this week that I've learned is we need everybody. We all need to do our part, no matter which part or which sector we're coming from, or what our personal beliefs or alignment is. Just dig in and start doing the work. Think about how you shop, how you store food at home, and then what you do with it. Hopefully you're eating all of it, but if there are bits and pieces left over, then start composting and do that. So we're doing that as a business. Kroger has been working on this for decades, but more recently with Zero Hunger, Zero Waste, we've really been focusing on reducing our own food waste generated in our retail stores, and also improving diversion of food from landfill, because many of us already know, but reducing food waste is the number one solution to reversing the effects of climate change, because food waste in landfills creates greenhouse gases. So we can all do our part.
I think on the marketing front and the messaging front, I think we've done, or there has been a lot of work there. I mean, heck, you had John Kerry running on that platform in 2000, so it's like you've already had so much volume of information on that. I think it's now up to consumers to adjust their purchasing decisions, and then producers to create the incentives for the consumer to continue adjusting their purchasing decisions. So pricing is what matters most to most people, taste, and so investing in ways to make things taste better but still have the impact that we would like for it to have. All of that needs to be done kind of in symbiosis, and so it takes time for those investments to happen, and then for the decisions for the customer at the shelf to make those changes. So that's, I think, where you could get the best bang. And then infrastructure, so emerging markets where most of the consumption's happening, could be a great place to start investing early, where those infrastructures are still young and could enjoy the benefits of all of our knowledge on sustainable food development, and have it start right out of the gate with that.
I agree with what they both said. In my mind, one of the biggest misnomers of innovation is it gets very tied tightly to technology innovation, and that's just one kind of innovation. There's policy innovation, and process innovation, and capital innovation, and all sorts of other types of innovations that need to come together to really drastically reduce food waste. So I'll give you one that's super boring. I work at a tech company that everything's supposed to be super sexy, but one of the big ways we were able to reduce significant food waste at Google, which has cafes in 170 cities in the world, we made the plate smaller. It seems really dumb, but it's really accessible. We went from 2-inch deep plates to 1-inch deep plates, and suddenly there was a lot less food waste because the tendency for people to fill a 1-inch deep plate with more food is less likely. So I think big picture, we need to embrace a whole host of solutions that are not just about really, really high tech. And I get to see that because I work for a high tech company.
Yeah, so to push a little bit more on that, you work at the Food for Good at Google. So in addition to changing the size of the plate, what else does a tech company like Google have to do with food waste and these issues?
Well, we're a tech company, and we were one of the first corporations in the world to ensure that every staff member had a good meal to eat every day. We believed that was an investment in the staff to actually then reduce our healthcare costs, honestly, right? Big win on the other side. So as a result, before the pandemic, we were producing over 300,000 meals a day, again, in 55 countries and 170 cities. So we have a massive food supply chain that goes through our system every day. Some of the things that you might not think would be interesting are actually supporting companies like Yoni's company, Grain for Grain. A good example of that is way back when farmers would give us, for example, like heads of broccoli because they didn't think we would want what was at the bottom of the box after processing, like the broccoli, little tiny broccoli tips and florets. But you could turn that into great cream of broccoli soup, right? I don't need the whole head of broccoli to show up. I'm going to chop it up anyways.
Right.
I'll buy everything that's left over on the processing line that you didn't think you could sell, right? So how do we work upstream with suppliers who are doing some really amazing work using, like byproducts of the processing efforts, or even parts of the plant that you wouldn't normally buy. Another great one, you go to the store and you buy green onion. Do you think green onion only grows 12 inches tall? No, it actually grows 3 feet tall, but they chop off 2 feet of it because they can't stick it in the box. So we can actually go back and ask for these things. Hey, farmers, please don't chop everything down so it fits in the box. We actually want the whole plant. So we work with suppliers upstream, and then I can talk a little bit later about what we're doing downstream with waste management and composting as well.
That would be great. Yeah, on that note, I just want to, the call to action today is for everyone to stop buying baby carrots. That's my thing. When I think about how things are cut and changed just so that they're packaged so consumers will want to buy them, so many kids don't even realize that baby carrots don't grow in the ground as baby carrots. So, side note, but that just made me think of that. So I want to go to Yoni. You are the co-founder of a San Antonio-based food tech startup that turns spent grain into a low-carb, high-protein flour. So it's great to upcycle, but sometimes, ironically, some of these products end up actually costing 2, 3, 4 times more than the other products. So how can we make it more accessible and affordable so that this is the go-to choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my background was actually ironically in oil and gas, and I was in economics in oil and gas, studied petroleum engineering. And the irony of it was the reason why we looked at food sustainability as like a great place to build a business was there's a mismatch in the market where I think every time somebody creates these like great products, on the marketing front, they charge the premium to that product. And then what happens is it limits your actual, total growth as a company or the amount of revenue you could really get if all you're doing is marketing to people that make $150,000 or more. And so there's a reason why oil and gas is still around, is that the affordability and availability of it is so prevalent that it's so inelastic. It doesn't matter where it goes, people are going to keep using it. And so for me, on the upcycling side, I was thinking if we could make something that allows that approach to make something affordable, available, all the other things that we're trying to accomplish on the sustainability side will just as a byproduct or secondhand effect happen. And so when we were looking at it, we really approached it the same way the early whey manufacturers from the cheese making process approached it. And they really worked on kind of behind the scenes with these manufacturers, the cheese and dairy manufacturers. And now whey is this massive kind of economy, its own little thing. And a lot of that reason was they spent so much time on the technology, they spent so much time with the more institutional level folks that now whey is in almost everything. There was a couple products earlier this week that had whey in it, and that was from just 30 years of a lot of development. And so we approached it in that effect. And I think that's the most important thing to me, is that if you really want real movement, it's great if it sounds good, it's great if it actually works, but it has to work at a scale that everybody can appreciate the benefit from it. So that's been our approach this whole time. And so, we'll see if it works.
I might connect a couple dots, if helpful, for context, because you might wonder how the three of us are here together. It's not just by chance, even though we have 2 sections of today on the world's dumbest problem. But as the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation, our signature program is our Innovation Fund. So our foundation is relatively new. We just were established as a public charity in late 2018. But we were really built with the idea of innovation in mind. So we wanted, and Kroger was generous enough to seed the foundation with $10 million. And we started to focus first on innovation. And so far we've had 2 cohorts. We worked with our partners at ReFed also on our strategy, so credit to them. But we love innovators like Yoni. He's been part of our second cohort of innovators. So our first one was really focused on food waste prevention and reduction. Our second cohort was on upcycled foods. So really, how do we use the byproducts of food processing and manufacturing in some constructive way to create new consumer-facing products that hopefully someday can be sold at retail and produced at scale. So really deriving value from a waste stream of food processing. So Grain for Grain is an awesome example of that, and we're really thrilled that he was part of our cohort. So that's how we are connected. Emily has been an amazing advisor. Now we work with Google on food waste reduction in general as a company, but Emily's on our advisory council for the Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation because she's incredibly bright and fun and has been a great mentor to some of our innovators. So that's kind of the thread that ties us together here, just if that's helpful to share.
Denise is also extremely fun, if you get to know her.
A lot of love on the food waste team. So Google works with companies like Kroger to build a more equitable, charitable system to food rescue. Can you talk about that work a little bit, Emily, and possibly Denise as well? What does an equitable, charitable system look like?
So there are probably on the order of 100,000 food banks and pantries in this country, and many, many more in the world. And right now, it is actually not all that equitable how that surplus food is currently distributed. And Denise has a dream, which I then adopted because I just think Denise is very cool. we've strongly believed that there's more food than enough food in this country to go around. Honest to goodness, there's so much surplus. The trouble is, it's really hard for all of these incredible organizations to work together well. So imagine in a situation potentially in the future where, let's say I'm running Emily's Food Bank, right? And I'm supposed to go pick something up on a Friday, but for whatever reason, I'm not feeling well that day and I can't go, right? If that's the case, there's almost nothing I need to do. Automatically the next person in line gets notified and they get to go pick up, and then so on and so forth and so on and so forth. That is a potential reality we see in the future, whereas right now the system is actually quite, I would say, fixed, right? It's like if Emily's pantry was assigned to go pick up at this Kroger store and I don't show up, that food actually ends up in waste, right? Because it's much harder to broker the secondary and tertiary priorities of agencies. And so we have a vision of the future where anyone can participate in this, but we can still prioritize who comes and picks up first.
Yep, totally agree. That is the dream, with guidelines and guardrails in place, right? So they're helping us create rules. Like we would have rules because, of course, food safety, again, is still our top priority. So we have to make sure that the people picking up the food are trained and know how to do it and how to transport it safely. And that's particularly difficult in prepared foods. So we're still, there are still some categories of foods that it's hard for us to donate because of the food safety implications of how it's transported and then served. So we're trying to work on that, unlock more categories for donation, but then also work with some new organizations because, again, it takes everyone. Like, we need everybody to help with this. So that's really the hope. Working together with Emily's team, they've been amazing, by the way.
So in a lot of food rescues, sometimes at the larger scale, some of the issues around infrastructure, right? Like moving food from point A to point B, making sure it has the cold storage it needs. A lot of food pantries can't even accept food that needs to be refrigerated in some places. So how do we kind of try to solve for some of these issues?
Well, the high-level theme here for me is simply starting by saying, here's what food we have, and here's where it's at. And here's how many more days we have left on this food that's going to expire eventually. I think it's really hard to find a single place where you can find all of that information and people are willing to raise their hands. So think about it. Craigslist is one of the most incredible platforms in the world because it makes it really easy, whoever you are, to basically raise your hand. You say, I have this, or I want this, right? And so when it comes to getting to that future vision, and even connecting logistics, there's people who have backhaul. It's surprising to me. I don't know how much you drive your car, but it is the world's worst utilized asset class on earth. Like, most cars sit on a parking lot 23 hours a day, and you're driving it only 1 hour a day. So that vehicle is only being used 5% of the time. Imagine if all of the logistics in the world could be utilized to move excess food or anything else. And so the first step is just to make, here I have surplus food, or here I have surplus miles available, and then the dots can actually connect themselves almost organically as a starting point. Technology can come into play and start matching that, quote, supply and demand of whether food or logistics, but we can simply start by just making this excess available.
Yeah, no, that was great. I'm trying to think through other scenarios or issues that we've seen, and a lot of it too comes down to the infrastructure of transportation here for more of commercial cases, and a lot of what we built in the last 60, 70 years has been just in time. And so the idea is you order it, it'll be here in 3 weeks, no real redundancies, and COVID really stress tests that, and so now you're seeing policymakers on both sides have been trying to domesticate a lot of that, and so I think part of that will be solved as there's more redundancy here, more storage here, and we're not as just in time or as thin. There's no thin margins on transportation. There's a little bit more margin to give, and I think it could be filled by food waste or other things that otherwise would have been food waste. Sorry. But yeah, it's a big problem. Yeah.
Denise? I would say too, we also we're being very thoughtful, I would say, about using surplus food as the term to talk about and not calling it food waste. And I think that's what we have to get our head around a little bit, is it is surplus food. And it is nutritious, it is still fit for people to eat, and we want to get it to people who need it as quickly as possible. And we think of it, too, like, and I think Yoni mentioned early, we're a business, we're a grocery retailer. Our goal is, in a perfect world, everything that came in the back door would go out the front door with our customers. It just doesn't happen that way. There is always surplus. So the idea is, how can we move as much surplus as possible? And before we put it even available for donation, we mark it down. So to the point of affordability, we do have a very, very much a process where we, sell, we mark it down, try to sell it again, and then we have to decide whether it is eligible for donation and rescue or not as surplus food. If it is no longer, or if it is not eligible for donation and cannot go to people, then we use animal feed and composting programs. So almost all of our stores, we have a few hundred stores left that we're trying to stand up food waste recycling programs with this year, but probably 90% of our stores have those active programs in place, and they work on those partnerships at the very local level to say, animal organizations, sometimes a zoo will take the surplus food. So we're trying to keep it out of the landfill as much as possible. And the beauty of Zero Hunger, Zero Waste for a company like ours is the message to our associates is zero. Zero food should go in the trash. We have all the other options available, so let's just manage it wisely and put it in the appropriate bin at the back of the store. So we keep working on it. We're not perfect, but we're on the journey, I would say.
Can I make one more plug for some of the things that Denise said? I think at the end of the day, if we don't manage to get that surplus to people who can eat it, which is its highest and best use, food was grown, intended for people to eat it, we really have some other options other than landfill, which is currently, unfortunately, the easiest thing to do, right?
Right.
Plug for Refed's Catalytic Capital Fund that just launched 2 weeks ago, wherever you're at.
We will hear more about that on the next panel.
We'll hear about that soon, but I want to plug that because Google went in as the anchor funder because we really believe that more cities can do composting. Right. We want to compost in every city that we're in, but we can't because there aren't municipal composting infrastructure available for us to plug into. So in as much as we can support policies and capital markets and investing in things like composting and animal feed channels, that really helps us divert that food waste from landfill. Not only is reducing food waste is important, but diverting it all from landfill is absolutely critical. And that's why Google made 2 big goals 2 weeks ago, which is about having our food waste by 2025, and then also, again, diverting it 100% from landfill, which is what Denise's company inspired us to do.
Last thoughts? The clock just went out, but I want to give you just a couple seconds if you have any last thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to mention reframing the name. I thought is a good plug to put in there. One of our always we pitch to customers or other companies. We're doing a juice pulp pilot, a coffee grounds pilot. We just tell them, hey, we're going to help you maximize your food asset. So from a company standpoint, it's all assets that you bought, and so we're going to help you maximize that. And so from a business perspective, it helps quite a bit reframing the naming as well. Food waste is not really helpful at all.
Doesn't sound good, does it?
No.
I would also want to just give a call out to our partners for our second Innovation Fund cohort, and they were Village Capital. They were here for a few days this week too, and they ran a 6-month workshop and program with all of the 10 innovators in that cohort, and that was an amazing add to the program as well.
That's great.
Thank you all so much. Can I give them a round of applause?